You're marched out of the town jail just as the bell of St. Walburga tolls prime, and you've never felt more famous or more forgettable at once. Famous, because every baker, cooper, and goose herder in the Shire seems to have found an errand that involves passing through the market square. Forgettable, because the beadle doesn't say your name, only your offence. Smuggling salt through the king's levy. The crowd murmurs. The word smuggler tastes exciting in other people's mouths. It tastes like old rope and bad sleep in yours. Before diving into these forgotten stories of survival and suffering, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together, from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. They tie you to the whipping frame where notices are posted. Lost pigs, lost husbands, proclamations about grain. The frame smells of ash and old rain. A clerk unrolls a parchment that looks longer than your life and reads your sentence while you study the toes of your bare feet. A tiler whistles. A child asks her mother why your shirt is being cut down the back. Because, the mother says, laws are best remembered when they sting. You have heard of the instrument but never met it. When the jailer lifts the cat. Oh, Nine Tails. You understand its name. It isn't one whip but a brood. 9 leather tails braided from old harness and sailors' offcuts. Each tail knotted near the tip and dressed with little iron kisses. Nothing sharp, nothing you can complain about, just enough to conduct pain like a church bell conducts sound. Count, the sergeant says. You nod, though counting is the last arithmetic you'll manage today. The first strike doesn't slice, it lands, like a thrown net. You feel breadth before you feel depth. Heat before heat turns to something with edges. The crowd sound turns strange and distant, a sea heard from inside a barrel. You remember everything you swore you wouldn't, the hidden cask in the hedgerow, the wink from the ferryman, that little private thought. It's only salt, not treason. The second stroke makes the first seem like conversation. Knots find places you didn't know were map-worthy. Your breath becomes a bellows at a forge that won't catch. By the fifth, you have learned the rhythm. Pain has its own liturgy. A fall, a bloom, a long bright oh no that lengthens into a dull oh still. You find a ridiculous thought, how the tails make your linen shed fluffs of thread, as if the whip is combing your shirt into confetti. Someone laughs too loudly. You wonder if it's you. There is a kindness in counting. It means there is an end. 12. 12 and done. The sergeant reads the last line. Let this be a warning, and the beadle lifts your chin, checking your eyes for that soft, all too useful glaze. He wants a lesson learned, not a body to carry. They splash water down your back. It feels like 1,000 icy bees, and then that passes too. Everything passes in this town. Fairs, frosts, saints' bones, and men like you. When the ropes are cut and your shirt clings like a wet leaf, the crowd parts. Some faces are bright with the righteous satisfaction of seeing the law have muscles. Others, quiet, bakers' faces, are thinking about the price of salt tomorrow. You're thinking about stairs. The jailer presses a jar of goose grease into your palm. He's practical, not kind. Even the jail has budgets to mind. You walk past the stalls, every step a reminder your back has learned a new language. A boy shadows you and asks if smuggling is exciting. Only in stories, you say. The boy nods. Everyone prefers the story. You pass a church door. A draft hits your skin, and you swear you can hear your own back cool. Outside the town, you find the hedge where you once buried contraband and put the jar down like a small vow. In a week, the skin will harden. In a month, the memory will become a shape you can stand beside. In a year, some other fool will be tied to the same frame, and you'll find you can look or look away, depending on the wind. You will keep a clean trade, or a cleaner one. You will notice every 9-tailed thing. A cat on a tavern roof, a rope's frayed end, your own thoughts splitting and braiding whenever profit winks from the hedge. The law was meant to right itself. across your back. It did, but it also wrote something else. A private grammar of limits, of prices, of the precise width between daring and foolishness. You are not a hero or a villain. You're a citizen with a freshly negotiated spine. And tomorrow you will carry a sack of legal salt as if it were a crown. You don't remember the first rumor about you, only that by the time the reeve knocked at your workshop door, the rumor had matured into a charge, clipping coins, thin as a fast day and twice as joyless. You're a cooper by trade. You shave staves, not silver. But the town has been hungry for an example. And examples, like barrels, take shape under pressure. The square feels larger than usual, as if your ears had been helping measure it all these years. You notice absurd things. A cabbage leaf glued to the cobbles, a pigeon hopping on one foot like a saint doing penance, the way the sheriff's gloves creak, slow, expensive. The sentence is swift. For fraud upon the king's image, let the offender be marked, that all may know. The crowd hums. They like knowledge you can see. They sit you on a stool that has known many thighs. The clerk asks which ear you prefer. You want to say, the one I can't hear your voice with, but humour is a spice best kept away from official stew pots. You choose the left because the left feels less you. The surgeon is competent. Competence is a type of mercy you never appreciated before. He speaks to you the way you speak to barrels, steady, instructional, as if explaining a joint that simply must be made. There is no drama, only method. A strip of linen to steady your head, a small wooden wedge for your teeth, an iron that has met heat and water and learned from both. When it's over, the surgeon's assistant presses clean cloth, and you realize tears are involuntary as breath. Not for the pain, which is vivid but manageable, but for the small private grief of asymmetry. You have been edited. The world is a little louder on one side and a little emptier on the other. They hand you a cap to wear until the linen dries. It's a mean thing, thin and too small, but you nod as if receiving a coronet. The beadle reads the last line. Fine, your oath to amend, and the crowd disperses with the energy of a fair closing. Life is efficient. It must be, to survive so many of us. The baker's boy who buys your scrap hoops for kindling looks at you differently, curious, not cruel. He'll stare for 3 days and then stop. Children are the best philosophers. The first week is training. You learn to sleep on the other side. You learn that the wind likes to practice on you when it has nothing better to do. You learn a hat solves more than weather. Hats achieve what sermons only ask for, charity. When your cap sits just so, people see the brim, not the history beneath it. You become tidy in new ways, shaving closer, trimming your beard so it balances. Your face, choosing colours that draw the eye to the living, expressive parts. Vanity. Perhaps. Survival? Absolutely. Trade slows, then returns by a path as quiet as moss. Farmers who knew you before the rumour return first. Their barrels don't care about politics. They care about water staying where water is told. A monk. From the priory orders 3 tubs and says nothing about your ear. Monks understand what vows cost. A widow brings a crack-mouthed butter firkin and holds your gaze a beat longer than custom. Pity is a bridge. If you step lightly, you hear jokes. You will always hear jokes. Some you let pass like smoke through thatch. Some you answer with better ones. Lost an ear, a carter says. No, you answer, tapping your cap. Mislaid, a handle. Laughter edits the sharpness down to something you can carry. There are practicalities. The reeve revisits to confirm your mark. You imagine he has a tally in his mind, a row of little half circles. You consider leaving town, then don't. Leaving would be an admission you refuse to sign. Staying is a longer, duller courage, the kind without choruses. You practice it like a psalm, repetitive, honest, a rope you climb hand over hand. A year later, a boy will apprentice to you, and he will never know your pre-cap face. He will learn to judge staves by touch, to read grain the way sailors read, clouds, and he will absorb your quiet habit of facing people with your whole body. Perhaps, without ever naming it, he will learn that shame is not always an ending, but sometimes a hinge. Doors turn on hinges. So do lives. On feast days, when the town is freest with its staring, you will take off your cap yourself, not as a dare, not as a sermon, but as a weather report. Here I am. Here is what was done. Here is the work I do anyway. The wind will be brisk. The bells will be bright. The pigeons will remain unimpressed. And in the long market of your years, you will discover a strange profit. Once you have survived public loss, bargaining with private fear gets easier. You have already paid in coin that cannot be clipped. You were not accused by a lover or a rival, but by a system that adored tidy answers. In a town where reputation travels faster than carts, an accusation of breaking marital vows becomes a civic hobby. You protested with the fervour of innocence, then, with the fatigue of anyone being ground by wheels they didn't build. The magistrates wanted a symbol the whole parish could read at walking pace. They chose your face. They kept it clinical. The elder physician carried a ledger of precedent. The younger carried gauze. You noticed their shoes, one pair newly blacked, the other stained with herbs. While they prepared their table, you looked at the world the way a traveller memorises a view before a tunnel. The curve of the mullioned window, a fly worrying the ink on the clerk's pen, your own hands folded in a shape that looked older than you felt. The moment itself was quick, the way thunder can be quick, even when the storm lasts all afternoon. They used skill. Skill is the state's favourite mercy. There was pressure. There was a bright crowding of sensation. And then there was absence, like a bell that has been lifted instead of rung. The physician spoke softly, practical as any tailor. What to clean with, how to sleep, which perfumes to avoid, how to keep dust from turning an injury into a season. Recovery was its own apprenticeship. You learned that smell is not simply pleasure, it is orientation. Without it, bread becomes geometry. Rain becomes only wet. You discovered how much memory is housed in scent. Your mother's hearth, a winter apple, your father's wool. You found other anchors, sound, weight, the nap of cloth under your fingers, and taught your body new routes home. The first foray into the market was a pageant you did not audition for. People looked, then looked away with the speed of those who don't want to be caught staring. Some tilted their heads at you the way one tilts at a painting that refuses to yield its secret. A child whispered, and his mother shushed him as if quiet could erase the educational value of your existence. You kept walking. Putting one foot in front of the other isn't free, but it's purchasable. You paid. You found the mask maker the way thirst finds a well, by rumour, then by smellless intuition. His shop was a museum of faces, saints for pageants, fools for mummers, sober visages for penitents who wanted to hide their old selves while their new ones took root. He measured you as if composing a psalm in leather, patient, exact, reverent without being pious. You tried on possibility. A simple bridge to restore your silhouette. A more elaborate piece that turned necessity into ornament. You chose a modest one you could live inside. The mask did not lie about what happened. It negotiated it. People spoke to your eyes as they should. The line of your face drew fewer questions. Children asked if it hurt. You said at first yes, then not as much, then not the way you think. They nodded with the gravity of small clerics and ran to build something daring with sticks. Work returned in a new guise. Your old craft, copyist of charters and epitaphs, proved compatible with quiet. You found you could sit longer, study letters as landscapes, give petitioners a hand they trusted. Your handwriting, which had always been neat, learned a new steadiness, as if each downstroke were a small promise kept. You discovered allies where you didn't expect them. A confectioner saved you the first buns of Michaelmas because he liked your careful talk. A cantor from the church, whose own voice had been altered by illness, shared with you the art of breathing through change. A mason missing 2 fingers, and a miller with one clouded eye formed with you, a fellowship of the edited. You met sometimes on Sundays and played a game. List 3 things your loss taught you to notice. You became specialists in noticing. There were cruelties too, as dependable as winter. A drunk reached to tug the edge of your mask like a curtain. A pair of youths made oinking noises. Wit is in short supply when courage is cheaper. You learned to choose your streets after dark. You learned that dignity wears boots. It must walk itself home. Years pass. The mask changes with you, polished by habit, repaired where the leather thins. You keep the first one in a chest with your baptismal shirt. Sometimes you lift it and remember the afternoon the world reauthored your face. You do not love that day, but you are done hating it. It is a page, and many other pages surround it. One winter you apprentice with the mask maker. He teaches you to cut, to stitch, to make space for breath. You help fit a mask for a veteran whose cheek never healed, for a labourer whose jaw was broken by chance, for a young woman who wants the serenity of a saint for a pageant and discovers she likes the feeling of being seen for what she chooses. You are not a priest, but people tell you things as if confession could be made to leather. You listen. You give them faces they can live in, and sometimes the faces give something back. In the end, the town remembers you less for what you lost than for what you made. Careful texts, useful masks, a path trodden by those who came after with different wounds and similar needs. There are many kinds of noses. Some sniff out trouble. Some lead you towards supper. Yours, absent, present, translated into craft, points to a simple truth. A body can be revised and still belong to its owner. And a life can be public lesson and private mastery in the same breath. You thought libel was just ink arranged ambitiously. Turns out it's also a wooden device with 5 neat holes and a crowd with infinite afternoons. When the bailiff hauled you from the scriptorium, your fingers still smelled of oak gall. A tidy irony, the same digits that copied a alderman's. Foibles into a pamphlet now become the pamphlet. They set the finger pillory on a trestle right outside the Guildhall, where benches form a natural theatre. The device is small compared to the stocks, almost courteous, like a handshake that lasts too long. The clerk reads the charge, malicious writings leading to disorder. You think of the disorder as laughter in the tavern and decide never to let a magistrate curate your vocabulary again. One board lifts, the other waits. You lay your hands as instructed. The wood is worn smooth by 1,000 former contributors to civic education. The lid comes down with a click that is strangely elegant, as if your joints were pegs in a well-made instrument. The lock turns. There. Not agony, just availability. Your hands are now public property from wrist to nail. The first hour is novelty. People point, whisper, invent biographical details in real time. A fishwife says you're the one who wrote her man can't. Count past 6. You didn't, but you could have. He's currently holding 7 eels like a riddle. A boy compares your trapped fingers to carrots in a market display. He is neither wrong nor helpful. You breathe and consider carrots. The second hour is education. Fingers are a coastline where the tide of attention keeps nibbling. Someone flicks a knuckle. You flinch and curse your own reflex. A passing scholar inspects your cuticles like a herald reading a banner and recommends a salve. A weaver you once overcharged for a letter of complaint says nothing, but stands within arm's length as if protecting a shrine. She leaves you a cup of watered ale and a lozenge of honey. Your throat thanks her. You resolve to apologize when apologies don't look like bribes. By the third hour, time changes shape. It lengthens and thins until you can see through it. Pain is not a roar, but a choir of small voices. Tingling, cramping, an ache that argues philosophically from thumb to palm. You discover a strange mercy. If you hold still enough, the wood warms and becomes not enemy, but indifferent companion. You learn to count breaths in groups of 60, to catalogue shoe leather that passes, to assign names to clouds based on relatives you prefer not to visit. Then come the lessons no one schedules. 2 apprentices approach with the summer swagger of lads who believe discomfort is always optional. They make a show of daring, threatening to tap, then tapping. your patience frays like old linen. Before fury can borrow your tongue, a woman, in a shawl you recognize from church steps between them and you, with the simple authority of someone who has raised 6 children and 3 harvests. Off, she says, and the word has the weight of a cathedral stone. They go. You do not know her name. You will light a candle for her anyway. As dusk leans in, the beadle returns with a key that looks large enough to lock a castle. He opens the device, and your hands are suddenly yours in the way air is yours after a fever breaks. You lift them, flex, listen to the tiny fireworks of tendon and joint. The world rushes back in. Smells, noises, the simple delight of being. Able to scratch where life itches. You are not done. There's a fine to pay, a promise to sign, a lecture to endure about the responsibilities of penmanship. You nod where nodding is useful, and hold your tongue where words would be expensive. Back in the scriptorium, ink greets you like an old friend who still owes you money. You sit. You place your hands flat, palms down, and address them privately. We'll be more careful, not less brave. In the months that follow, you notice new habits sneaking into your work. You check names twice. You write biting truths with humor that disarms before it wounds. When you must sting, you don't smear. You discover the footnote, a place where courage can live without shouting. People begin to quote you again, this time with a nod instead of a wink. And you practice a small daily ritual. Before starting the day's copying, you lay your fingers on the desk in the exact shape the pillory taught you and hold for a count of 10. Not as penance, but as posture. A reminder that freedom is sweetest to bodies that remember its dimensions. When apprentices ask why you do it, you say it steadies your line. They think you mean handwriting. You do, and more. Years later, when a new clerk is marched out for some seditious broadside that reads like poetry with a limp, you bring him a cup of watered ale and a honey lozenge. You stand within arm's length, just standing, nothing heroic, everything important, and you let him borrow the lesson you learned, that public shame can be survived by private discipline, and that sometimes the most radical thing a writer can do is keep writing with both hands, both eyes, and a tempered heart. You always had a voice that could cross a room without paying toll. Born clear, trained on market days, it carried prices, proverbs, and, yes, opinions. In a town that treats rumor like kindling, you were accused not of lying, but of volume, scolding a neighbor, correcting a reeve, advising the world to be better at a slightly inconvenient pitch. The council decided you needed a device, the way. Boys need bridles and donkeys need instruction. They bring out the brank, an iron circlet with a lattice over the mouth, hinged like a cruel locket. It isn't sharp. That's the point. It doesn't cut, it occupies. The bailiff explains in a tone practiced on goats. You will wear it for the length of a market, on a stool near the pump, where thirst brings everyone. You will learn to keep. Counsel, he says, as if counsel were a bashful cat. They fit the ring around your head, careful in that practical way officials get when they've done a thing many times. The tongue piece isn't a spike. It's a spoon of iron that presses down, not to harm, just to insist. Your mouth stays open an obedient fraction. Saliva takes this as invitation and begins a slow public life you cannot manage. 2 matrons nod in sympathy. A boy laughs and is sharply shushed by a grandmother whose own voice could command geese. The first sensation is not pain, but absence, the absence of reply. People address you, and your words stay behind your teeth like soldiers. At the wrong gate, you have to answer with eyes, shoulders, and, eventually, elbows. Dark humor arrives, untimely as always. You discover elbows are fluent in sarcasm. Hour 1 teaches humility with slapstick. A fly shows uncommon interest in your predicament, and you cannot swat without involving the entire apparatus. A kind soul dabs your lip with a cloth and whispers, "Nearly done," though it isn't. You begin to inventory faces instead of phrases, the miller's pale lashes, The baker's flowery forearms, the notary's look of practiced neutrality, the same face he wears when charging interest. Hour 2 teaches editing. You think of 100 things to say and discover 99 you can let go. The remaining one sparkles like a coin rescued from mud, worth speaking, even if it must be spoken later and softer. A neighbor passes, the very one you allegedly scolded for letting her chickens audition for sainthood on the church steps. She lingers, looks at the brank, then at you, and says, "I heard the fox took 2 of yours last winter. I've extra eggs." You manage a nod that contains 3 sentences and a psalm. By hour 3, you're a semaphore system in a gown. People bring you tidings, a marriage, a lost shoe, a price on barley you file for revelatory use. Children engage with you as a puzzle and you lean into it, making faces that set them howling with laughter. Laughter is politics. It rearranges the square without permission. You notice the bailiff grow uneasy when the crowd's mood turns gentle. Punishments perform best when the audience agrees with the plot. Do you feel humiliated? Yes. Do you feel silenced? Not exactly. You feel translated. Your voice, denied the front door, sneaks out the windows. A raised eyebrow conveys paragraphs. A tilt of the head is a petition. A slow blink is a veto. You become eloquent in punctuation. When at last the key appears and the hinge sighs, the air on your lips is an absolution. The device comes off with more care than it went on. The bailiff can tell which way the wind has shifted. He reads the concluding caution, and you perform the required nods, filing your commentary under later, in my kitchen, with trusted ears. In the days that follow, your voice returns to you like a friend who left the party early. You test it, small, words first, then larger, like bread rising. Something's changed though. You hear your own echo, the phantom weight of iron making you consider whether each sentence is worth the metal it would take to restrain it. Often it is, sometimes it isn't. You discover a theory of speech that would make a friar weep with envy. Say things only you will carry tomorrow. The market forgets faster than it forgives, which is good news for everyone. The brank is back on its hook in the constable's shed beside the broken pitchforks and yesterday's authority. People still talk. This is Europe, not Eden. But you've upgraded gossip to news, complaint to petition, heat to light. When tempers flare at the pump, you step close, not loud. You ask a question instead of tendering a verdict. And, miracle of small civic arts, the water clears. Months later, you catch your reflection in a tub of apples and see no iron, only a mouth that has learned to count, not pennies. Consequences. You smile. A child nearby points and says, "That's the lady who talks with her elbows." You bow. Let it be your epitaph someday. She spoke. She also pointed to the right door. They say a reputation is a burden you carry through life. You didn't expect the magistrate to make the metaphor literal. Your offense? Failure to pay a guild tax, though to hear the crier shout it you'd think you toppled a cathedral. The sentence? Stone dragging. The punishment is simple, which makes it crueler. They fasten a thick rope around your waist, knot it to a boulder as wide as a beer cask, and point you toward the town square. Walk. Everyone is watching. The first step is a negotiation between pride and physics. The stone doesn't budge. Someone snickers. You lean harder, back bent, shoes slipping on cobblestones that were laid with less care than the town's excuses. At last, it lurches forward, and the crowd gasps with the satisfaction of theatre. Children follow as if you were a parade float in a saints' festival. Except instead of flowers you trail grit, and instead of music you give them grunts. Every turn of the street is a sermon. Housewives peek from shutters, commenting on your form. "Heave with the legs," one says, as though you're at market lifting cabbages. A blacksmith times your pace like a foreman. The humiliation is worse than the weight. Your back aches, your pride throbs. A priest offers a benediction, but you can't stop long enough to receive it. If you halt, the rope bites, and the stone becomes a judge with no mercy for recess. By the third street, your thoughts wander in strange directions. You imagine the stone as your business partner, stubborn but reliable. Each scrape on the ground is its complaint, each jolt forward, its reluctant agreement. The crowd throws words like pebbles, lazy, debtor, fool. You discover that words weigh, less than rock but bruise longer. You focus on rhythm, 3 steps, pause, drag, breathe, like a psalm set to cobblestone. Finally, the sergeant calls a halt in the square. You collapse, rope cutting your waist, the stone resting like a throne you will never sit upon. The clerk announces the lesson. Let all know debt drags a man down. The crowd disperses, taking your dignity like souvenirs. Later, when you crawl home, you will think of stones differently. They are not just burdens but teachers. Some men build with them, some men carve them, and some men, like you, drag them through the streets. And you vow, next time, pay the tax, or at least make the stone smaller. Your crime was small, shouting at the reeve, calling him a goat in a wig. The punishment, however, comes with iron. They bring forth the shoes of shame, wooden clogs lined, with blunt iron nails on the inside, and weighted soles so heavy they clang with each step. You must wear them on a march through the town's busiest market. At first you think, how bad can shoes be? Then they slip your feet in, and the nails press, not sharp enough to pierce, but insistent, like cruel thoughts that refuse to leave. Each step drives them deeper against your skin. The weights make your legs swing like church bells. The sound is humiliating, clomp, 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 louder than any proclamation. People turn before they see you, already smirking at the noise. The route is deliberate cruelty. Past the butcher's stall, where bloodstains make your shoes look tame. Past the weaver's, where apprentices giggle and mimic your walk. Past the tavern, where men clap and cheer as though you were entertainment. You try to hold dignity upright, but dignity is fragile when your stride looks like a puppet pulled by spiteful strings. By halfway, sweat beads on your brow. Each step is bargaining. If I place my foot just so, perhaps the nails will press less. They never do. Children skip alongside, mimicking your gait, chanting clomp clomp, as if it were a festival dance. Your punishment has become their game, and that is its true sting. Not the pain, but becoming the town's lesson in ridicule. At last, the circuit ends. The bailiff removes the shoes with ceremonial slowness, as though peeling away a title. Your feet feel raw, though unbroken. You walk barefoot across warm cobbles, lighter than you've ever been, yet carrying a new weight, the memory of the crowd's laughter. From now on, every time you slip into your own boots, you'll check them for nails, both real and metaphorical. And when you see the reeve, you'll think the word goat, but you'll keep it in your head where nails cannot reach. Your offense was blasphemy, or what passes for it when you say the priest sings off key. They drag you to the edge of the square, where a tall wooden cross stands, not for devotion, but for discipline. The whipping cross, they call it. They strip your tunic to the waist, bind your arms wide, and suddenly, you are part of a living sermon. The priest intones a psalm, while the sergeant unfurls the whip. The crowd gathers, pious onlookers who treat this as a 2-for-1 deal. Devotion and entertainment. Children perch on barrels for a better view. You tilt your head back, staring at the sky, wondering if heaven records such things, or if it looks away politely. The strokes come steady, paced like church bells, not savage, not sloppy, measured, as though each lash is a syllable in a sermon about order. You breathe through it, not crying out, though your body wants to. The humiliation isn't in the pain, it's in the posture. Arms spread, body displayed. You look like the very figure on the altar, except this is no sacrifice for salvation, just a municipal example. Between lashes, you hear the priest lecturing, "Behold the wages of careless tongues." You want to retort, but your own tongue is dry as parchment. The crowd murmurs assent. though some faces look uncomfortable, especially the younger ones. Children often see cruelty clearer than adults. Still, no one intervenes. The whip cracks on, and the lesson burns itself onto your skin. When it's finished, you are released. Shirt tossed back to you like charity. You stagger, not broken, but changed. Every time you pass the cross in future, you will hear echoes of leather and psalm, and perhaps you will sing softer in church, not out of piety, but because memory itself has a rhythm that no cantor can drown. In your village, hair is a crown more enduring than gold. For women, it marks modesty, fertility, dignity. That's why, when you're caught stealing bread, the magistrates choose the shaving punishment. A fine would be forgotten, but baldness is a sentence that lingers in mirrors. They sit you on a stool in the center of the market. A barber steps forward, razor gleaming, not with malice, but with practiced indifference. The crowd leans in, whispering. The first lock falls, and the air changes. People gasp not at bread theft, but at the sight of hair, the most private adornment, falling. In public, each stroke bears more scalp, and each bearing is a declaration. This woman sinned. You sit rigid, pretending the cold air on your skin doesn't matter. But it does. The breeze feels like laughter, the sun like judgment. When the barber finishes, he brushes away the last strands, leaving your head as bare as winter fields. The crowd murmurs. Some look smug, others embarrassed. A child giggles. The punishment works. You want to hide, though hiding is impossible when the sentence is written on your head. In the days that follow, your baldness precedes you into every room. Neighbors glance, then glance away. Children point. You wrap cloths around your head, but cloths only announce what they conceal. Time will heal, hair grows, but for now, you live as the lesson. And strangely, you learn something. Without hair, you notice faces more, voices more, the weight of your own bearing. You discover dignity isn't entirely shaved away. Sometimes it regrows faster than hair. You always thought water was a friend. You drank it, washed in it, even sang by the riverbank. But today, the water is part of your punishment. They call it the pig's basket, a wooden or wicker cage, big enough for a man or woman, not big enough for dignity. You are shoved inside, knees to chest, like a trussed fowl. The lid shuts with a creak, and suddenly the air smells of damp straw and river mud. Two men carry the basket on poles, parading you through town. Children laugh and point. After all, pigs travel this way to market. To them, you are livestock of shame. They stop at the bridge, tie ropes, and lower the basket so it dangles just above the river. Sun beats down. Flies circle. You cannot move, cannot stretch, cannot even scratch your nose. The crowd gathers, delighted by your discomfort. Every sway of the basket makes them laugh harder. Minutes stretch into hours. The heat builds, the ropes creak, and you feel less like a person than an exhibit. People toss pebbles into the water, making ripples that slap against your cage. A boy asks if you squeal. You remain silent. Silence becomes its own resistance. You close your eyes, pretend the rocking is a cradle, not a spectacle. You imagine release, cool grass, the feel of soil under free feet. At last, the sergeant hauls you up and unlocks the basket. You spill out like a fish too long kept. Your body aches, but your mind is sharper. You've learned what the punishment truly does. It doesn't break bones, it breaks illusions. You now know how quickly a person can be turned into livestock for laughter, and you vow next time to keep your head low in town, or at least away from wicker. You never feared shoes. They carried you to work, to festivals, to taverns where trouble usually begins. But now, shoes have turned enemy. They bring out the contraption with a flourish. Boots made of iron, thick as armor, glowing faintly from the forge. The punishment is called hot iron boots, and you're the unlucky model. The blacksmith's apprentices cheer as the boots clank toward you. Two guards hold you steady. The boots aren't glowing red when fitted, but they've been heated enough to trap heat like a cruel oven. Your feet slip inside, and immediately it's as if you're standing on midsummer coals. You bite your lip, determined not to give the crowd satisfaction. Walk, the bailiff says. You take a step. The sound echoes. Clomp, clomp, like a bell announcing shame. The heat radiates up your legs. At first you think you can endure, but the clever part is duration. With every step, heat builds. The crowd follows, curious to see how long before you stumble. Children chant, "March, march." Women shake heads at your foolishness. A beggar laughs, saying he's warmer than you are. The worst isn't the pain, but the absurdity. You look like a parody of a knight, armored only in shoes, marching to no battle but your own humiliation. The boots are heavy, each step deliberate, turning your walk into a clown's parade. Your dignity burns faster than your feet. Finally, the guards stop you at the church square. They remove the boots with tongs, as though your disgrace might be contagious. Steam rises. Your legs tremble. The clerk pronounces the lesson: better to walk in virtue than to march in iron. Later, lying in your bed, you wiggle toes still tingling from the ordeal. The punishment will fade, but the memory will remain. Forever after, when you lace ordinary shoes, you'll bless the leather as though it were salvation. Your crime was slander, or so they said. You thought it was truth with spice, but spice can choke. For your sharp tongue, they select the smoke punishment. They take you not to the square, but to a small timber shed at the edge of town. Inside, a brazier smoulders, filling the air with thick grey clouds. The guards shove you in and bolt the door. Immediately, smoke curls into your nose and throat, scratching, stinging. You cough, eyes watering, but coughing only makes it worse. At first you pace, thinking you can wait it out. But smoke moves like a trickster, wrapping around, seeping into cloth, clinging to hair. It turns your world into blur. Your mind plays tricks. Shadows dance, walls breathe. You imagine this is what witches see in cauldrons, visions rising from fumes, except your vision is a headache and tears. Outside, you hear muffled laughter. Villagers know what's happening, and they enjoy the thought of your misery. You try to sing to distract yourself, but the smoke steals melody, leaving only rasp. Minutes feel like hours. Your lungs beg for fresh air. You kneel, pressing face, close to floor where the air is thinner but less poisoned. At last, the door creaks open and fresh air rushes in like mercy itself. You crawl out, hair wild, eyes red, voice cracked. The crowd claps, half mocking, half impressed. The magistrate declares, "Let smoke cleanse the tongue." You stagger away, smelling of ash, throat raw. For weeks afterward, every fire makes you flinch. And when gossip stirs on your tongue, you think twice. Smoke lingers, not just in lungs, but in memory. Ordinary pillory is bad enough. Locked in, wood at the market, flies buzzing, children taunting. But you? You drew the long straw, or rather the Long March pillory. They fasten the wooden frame around your neck and wrists, heavy as a yoke. Normally, culprits stand in one spot. Instead, you're ordered to walk through every street of the town, from gate to gate. Guards march alongside, ensuring the parade never stalls. The first street is tolerable. People jeer, toss crumbs, point, but after an hour, your shoulders ache, wrists scream, back stoops. You shuffle like an ox ploughing cobblestone. Every corner brings fresh spectators, bakers, smiths, weavers, each with opinions sharper than tools. The worst is thirst. You can't scratch, can't sip, can't wipe sweat. A child runs up and dangles a mug of ale just beyond reach, laughing as you lunge like a chained dog. You learn quickly that the pillory isn't punishment by pain alone, it's punishment by helplessness. By the time you return to the square, you feel twice your age. The bailiff unlocks the device, and your arms fall limp like broken wings. The crowd disperses, having had their fun. You stand trembling, wood impressions carved on your skin. Later, when you hear another condemned to pillory, you'll smirk. Stationary, that's nothing. Because you know the true curse is not standing still, it's carrying shame through every street with nowhere to hide. You never thought air could weigh so much. Rope cuts into your wrists, arms twisted cruelly behind your back. The executioner threads the rope over a thick beam high above, the knot creaking like an omen. You hear townsfolk whisper the word again, strappado. It sounds exotic, almost foreign, but soon its meaning will live in your bones. The bailiff shouts your offence, mocking the magistrate, perhaps, or refusing a tax you couldn't pay. The crime hardly matters now. What matters is the crowd, their hungry eyes fixed on you as if the square itself were a theatre. You are the performance, and pain is the script. The rope jerks. Feet leave the earth. In an instant, your body knows. What words can't describe? The unnatural stretch of shoulders pulled backward, tendons straining, joints screaming. You dangle like a marionette without a master. For one mad second, you expect to swing gently, like a child on a rope swing. Instead, you twist, helpless, your entire weight tearing at sockets not built for such betrayal. The first wave of pain isn't sharp but deep, like invisible hands slowly unthreading your muscles. Breath comes ragged. A strange heat blooms across your chest, while your arms feel both numb and on fire. You want to scream, but the noise that escapes is closer to a sob. The crowd leans in. They've seen floggings, pillories, hangings, but strappado is rarer, crueler. Someone laughs. Someone else murmurs a prayer. Children clap as your legs twitch involuntarily, mistaking agony for dance. You are spectacle, entertainment. Time elongates. Minutes feel like hours. Each heartbeat is a hammer striking bone. The world shrinks to your shoulders. The slow grind of rope against wood. The buzzing in your ears that grows louder than the crowd. You swear you hear fabric tearing, but it's only flesh adjusting to impossible angles. And then comes the drop. Not to the ground, but just a few inches, a calculated slackening followed by another sudden stop. The jolt is worse than the hanging. Pain explodes, white hot, ripping through your chest like lightning. The crowd gasps as your body convulses. The bailiff smiles. This is the part they came to see. The magistrate proclaims, "Let all know, arrogance lifts no man." The irony sears deeper than the rope. You want to shout, to curse, but your tongue feels heavy, your voice gone. At last, they lower you. Knees buckle, shoulders throb like molten metal has been poured inside. Your arms hang limp, strange and foreign, as if they no longer belong to you. The ground, once your betrayer, now feels like a lover's embrace. The crowd disperses, satisfied. Children mimic your dangling posture in play. Neighbors shake their heads, muttering warnings to themselves. But for you, every loaf of bread you lift, every gesture to scratch an itch, will forever remind you of the day air itself became a weapon. At first glance, the device looks harmless. A wooden frame, a screw, 2 padded rests. You almost laugh. After strappado, after whips and stocks, this seems like carpentry, not punishment. But the hush of the crowd warns you otherwise. You sit on the stool. Guards guide your head into place. Chin forced onto the lower rest, skull pressed beneath the iron cap. The executioner tightens the screw until the wood kisses bone. It isn't painful yet, just snug, restrictive, like a helmet you cannot remove. The bailiff reads your crime, gossip, slander, perhaps questioning authority too loudly at the tavern. For each phrase he recites, the screw turns once. Creak. Pressure builds slowly, almost politely. At first it feels like nothing more than a headache brewing behind the eyes. But as minutes pass, the weight multiplies. Your jaw aches. Teeth grind. Pressure pushes down through your skull into your neck, clamping you in invisible jaws. The crowd watches closely, for this punishment has no blood, no spectacle. Only your changing face. Lips twitch, brow furrows, eyes water. Children giggle nervously. Old women cross themselves. Your pain is quiet, and that makes it unnerving. Turn. Creak. The vice tightens. Sounds warp. Voices blur as though your ears are stuffed with wool. You try to swallow, but your throat resists. Breath comes shallow, measured between screw turns. Your mind starts inventing absurd distractions. Songs from childhood, the smell of bread, the curve of a riverbank you once fished. But each thought is crushed beneath that sound. Creak, turn, creak. Time stretches into long tunnels of pressure. And then, a final twist. Pain flares bright, not sharp, but crushing, as though the world itself presses down. You imagine your head as a fruit, caught between boards, slowly squeezed until juice runs free. You realize the cruelty. This is punishment without visible wounds. No scars, only memory. At last, the magistrate lifts his hand. The screw loosens. Relief is violent, almost unbearable. Your head throbs as if the earth itself is shifting. Muscles tremble. The absence of pressure feels like falling. The clerk announces, "Let this frame remind us. A tongue too sharp will find its match." You stagger away. No blood marks your body, yet you are forever altered. Every word you speak afterward carries weight. Every laugh feels dangerous. Every whisper echoes with remembered creaks. From then on, silence itself becomes your truest companion.